We are just a few days away from UFC 318, Poirier versus Holloway 3, which means that it is time for the X's and O's. In this video, we will be getting into the weeds of the main event, and I will be outlining what I believe the game plans for both fighters are going to be and what I would advise their game plan should be coming into this highly anticipated trilogy. Because listen, man, this is legends only. These guys are absolute legends of the sport, two of the all-time greats. And not only that, this is a very fitting fight for the last dance for the Diamond from Lafayette, Louisiana in Dustin Poirier. We are in for it, and just, I feel like an all-time classic here, right? A high-level chess match when it comes to the striking, and just two dudes that I don't want to see either guy lose. I'm kind of hoping that the fight ends in a draw, but I think it is going to be very clear what we are going to see in the octagon come Saturday night. And listen, man, I'm very excited for this because these guys have some history, right? They fought each other twice. Dustin Poirier is up 2-0 in the series, which is important, right? Because Max Holloway, he hasn't been very good in trilogies, man. And given that was against one of the greatest of all time, the GOAT featherweight in Alexander Volkanovski, to where he got skunked, right? So there's a lot of motivation for Max coming into this to where he does not want to fall 0-3 against the Diamond, who's trying to ride off into the sunset, while Max, he's trying to go on a run in the lightweight division, something new for him, a new journey, new opportunities. We are in for a fun one at UFC 318. Excited to break this one down, man. But first, let's start with the tail of the tape. The big thing that stands out to me with this is up here, man, with the record, the experience of these two guys. Not only are they your favorite fighter's favorite fighter, these guys are respected by every fan, every fighter in the game, because they are true OGs, man. These guys have been in the game for such a long time, and championship experience is what both of these guys bring to the table here. They have, for the past several years, been fighting for titles, been fighting in super high-profile fights, or taking on dangerous top contenders to keep their spot and ranking in their weight classes. So both of these guys, man, absolute legends. Like I said, this is super fitting here for DP's final fight. But what's always so interesting, Max Holloway is going to be the taller guy here, right? And if you didn't see the face-off the other day that they did, Max Holloway looks like a damn welterweight out there. It looks like Max Holloway ate the featherweight Holloway, ate the lightweight Holloway, and now we got this like morphed version of Max Holloway. He looks massive. He looks huge out there when he's facing off to DP. But, you know, the interesting thing is Max has a reach disadvantage here, right? Which tends to be the thing, is Max is usually the taller guy in there, but he doesn't have the longest reach. But that is never really an issue considering how we've seen Max's style evolve, which we're going to discuss a lot in this video, because I think that that's very important coming into this. But both of these guys, man, absolute legends, and both coming off of losses, right? DP challenged Islam Makhachev back at UFC 302 for the lightweight title, to where he put up a much better fight than what a lot of people were expecting in that contest. But listen, it has been clear over the past few fights, while he was able to knock out Benoit Saint-Denis, which I saw coming a mile away. I was never high on BSD, but he had a super big deficiency with the boxing defense. If you have that, that is a recipe for a disaster against the Diamond. But I believe Dustin has slowed down just a little bit over his past few fights, where Max Holloway, while he just got KO'd by Ilia Topuria, there's going to be a lot of questions on what happens if he eats a big shot from Dustin. How does he respond? Is he going to be the same guy and have the same level of confidence from getting KO'd for the first time in her career? We're in for an absolute banger, man. Super excited for this. But let's start with, talking about the first two fights briefly here. Fight number one, to me, we can't really take a lot from it, right? This happened back in 2012, and look, it was a shorter notice opportunity, right? Max Holloway comes into the UFC, makes his debut, which is what makes this just such a storyline, man. Like, Max's first fight is Dustin. Dustin's last fight is Max. It doesn't get any cooler than this, man, for the BMF belt. But here's the thing. This fight here, both guys were, look at these dudes. They look like babies out there, man. Like, Dustin looks like a little bit of a crackhead. Max Holloway, young baby Max. These guys were so inexperienced, right? Dustin did have an experience advantage, and he went out there and showed that. Took Max down, was able to submit him, and that is the only time Max has been submitted in his entire career was by DP, which is very, very interesting, right? We know he got KO'd by Ilia, but in terms of another finish, DP is the only guy to submit him, right? So in the back of your mind, Is DP possibly going to look to grapple in this fight? I don't think that it's super likely, but again, very hard to take anything from this fight given how long ago it was and how much they've just grown and changed over the course of their careers. But the one that I think we could take a lot from here, fight number 2, back in 2019, one of the all-time classics, one of my favorite fights of all time. And look, there was some circumstances again coming into this fight, and I feel like that's something that's very important. It's not excuses. It's not, taking anything away from Dustin or anything, because like I said, I'm a massive fan of both of these guys. I'm just trying to call it like it is, man. Max took the other one. That was his first fight in the UFC. This was a shorter notice opportunity where he was clearly a 145-pounder, move up to face Dustin for the interim title, where Dustin was already established in the 55 division, and we clearly saw that Max was just not ready. He was not ready. He was muffin top Max. He just kind of looked fat. He looked just like he added on unnecessary weight, to where I wouldn't say that it affected him that much, because he went out there and was able to take a couple rounds off Dustin, had a lot of moments in that fight, but it was very clear that Dustin was the true 55er. Max was doing a great job putting the volume out there, doing what he does best, but it was the moments that Dustin was able to steal in the rounds. He had a significant power advantage. He showed that his countering when it came to the boxing was clearly a step ahead of Max in this fight, but this was a much closer fight than I feel like a lot of people remember. Max was doing a great job pressuring, putting his foot on the gas, kind of stinging him a lot with a lot of different shots, but it didn't have a ton of sting on it, to where now heading into fight 3, I think that's where things are going to get very scary for Dustin Poirier. But let's hop right into the game plan for Max plus Holloway, man, because I think that we're looking at a totally different fight here. I think fight 2, obviously, we can take some things from that. I think we will see some similar things because, again, that was 2019, right? We're in 2025 now. That's a lot of time for guys to make adjustments. Things have changed. I believe Max is more in kind of still hitting his stride in his career, to where Dustin's still very good, but I feel like we've kind of seen a little bit of a step back when it comes to Dustin Poirier in terms of slowing down a little bit. But here's what I'm looking for from Max coming into this fight. We're going to see a lot of elusiveness, right? Be very elusive if you're Max Holloway. Look at the Justin Gaethje fight, right? I know people want to talk about the Poirier fight, and there is a question, right? What's Max going to look like coming off of that KO loss? I'm expecting us to see probably the best version of Max Holloway that we've ever seen. And the reason for that being, going down to 45, that's not in the back of his head anymore, right? That is clearly out of the picture now. He is solely focused on making a run in the lightweight division, using this win over Dustin Poirier to defend the BMF title, to move forward, make a run. That's why he's been kind of saying these little salty things about Ilia Topuria, which I think he's salty, but he realizes that he has beef and kind of has history with the champ here, right? Max is on a short list of making a run here in the lightweight division. But when he fought Justin Gaethje at UFC 300, man, I think that was the best version of Max Holloway that we have ever seen, right? He had time to prepare for the weight class. He really filled out nicely into his frame, and his elusive footwork and speed that he put on display against Gaethje. I mean, I thought Max was going to win the fight. I even picked him by KO, which people were calling me an idiot and a casual for that. And I mean, I know I got lucky in the final second, but to go out there and put on a masterclass like he did, it was beyond impressive. It was the speed, it was the footwork, and we really saw this in the Arnold Allen fight, right? We saw Holloway lose to Volk for the 3rd time, and it was very clear that he took some time away, worked with his team, and I feel like that's one of the unsung things that we've seen throughout history in the UFC is we talk about the evolution in Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, who really improved his defense and his boxing. Max Holloway is one of those guys who he really changed his style for the better, right? He had a lot of moments against Ilia Topuria, right? If you go back and watch that fight, he was doing very, very well, but we saw this in the Arnold Allen fight, incorporating more kicks, switching stances, moving laterally, not just having to move forward into range all the time and pressure the hell out of people to where you're just using your face as a punching bag, right? That's not what we see from Max anymore. We see him very elusive. We saw that in the Gaethje fight, and the footwork and the speed is going to be a key for Max in this fight because I believe that he can frustrate Dustin, who has slowed down just a little bit. Dustin's going to want to get into the pocket. If you're Max, be elusive, stick and move on the outside, utilize, pressure at times, do some of the things that you were doing in fight 2 against Dustin, but don't just wade forward into range and give him those opportunities to where you can be the faster guy. Hit and not get hit, get in, get out of range. I think we're going to see a lot of things that Max was using against Gaethje in this fight. Now, Obviously, they're very different, right? Dustin Poirier is a much better boxer, and I think he's a better fighter than Justin Gaethje. I know Gaethje's dangerous, and he was able to head kick KO him, in their rematch for the BMF belt. But I believe that Dustin has really clean boxing, and one of the things that he does is he blocks incredibly well upstairs, right? He utilizes that high guard, kind of a modified Philly shell, gets that elbow in the air to block shots. But what happens with that is his body is available. And I think that Max, we saw him fight too, that famous audio where he's in the corner, man, he blocks weird, right? And I think Max was kind of unsure how to attack Dustin because of this very creative blocking system that Poirier has created for himself. And that's where attacking the body is going to come into play. Whenever Dustin's blocking his chin, it's going to be very hard to sneak those straight shots down the middle because one, you'll catch the elbow, you could damage your hand. He'll be utilizing that high guard to try to bait you and counter you with those hooks. Attack the body, just like he was doing against Justin Gaethje. Work the body of Poirier, bring those hands down because that will eventually open up the kicks, which we'll get to in a minute. But be very careful of Dustin Poirier's fence game, right? If you go back and you watch a lot of Dustin's fights, especially towards the end part of his career here, when you saw him up against Benoit Saint-Denis, when you saw him in there against Justin Gaethje, even mainly against Michael Chandler, we got to see it. Chandler had him backed up, had him kind of hurt against the fence, and you see Poirier just kind of playing that ropes game like you'd see in boxing, raising up the guard, just kind of deflecting the shots, and then as soon as he sees your hands drop, boom, here comes that big hook. And Dustin Poirier, he's a southpaw, but he is a right-handed dominant guy. So when you get hit by his right hook, that is the power hand. So you got to be very, very careful. And we saw Dustin, he will bait you. He'll want you to hit the body. So that way he can pick you off when you're closing into range. So Max has to be very careful. Even if he stings Dustin, don't get caught up in, up against the ropes, as you would say in boxing, to where you kind of play a little bit of possum. We do see Dustin do that, and he is able to really, really hurt guys with his hooks and his uppercuts. Another big thing here, Max is going to have an answer for the calf kick, because one thing that we've seen from Dustin is he does an outstanding job, and we're going to see an open stance battle here. Max yells switch, but he's predominantly orthodox. Dustin's a southpaw, to where that normally kind of kills that calf kick, right? When Max was against Gaethje could just blast that calf kick all day long, but when you're in the opposite stance, makes it a little bit harder. But Dustin does a great job of throwing his combinations, ending them with a calf kick as he's shifting forward with his combinations. He's going to look to attack the calf of Max Holloway, try to hinder the movement. He knows that Max has made these nice advancements in his game, and I think he's going to try to attack the base, make him more of a stationary target to where he can hunt him down and turn this into more of a boxing match to where Dustin will have the advantage. Now, he's going to have to counter Dustin Poirier's counters, right? In fight number 2, that was the difference in the fight, was the fact that Max, as good of a boxer as he has very good output, very good volume, and he throws video game combinations, right? He throws, so many different shots at you. But we saw in the Gaethje fight, he was a lot more methodical in the way that he was picking his shots. Even in the Ilya fight, until he got KO'd, he was picking his shots incredibly well, to where he's going to limit the opportunities for Dustin to be able to counter him. Now, you need to be able to counter Dustin's counters, because Dustin is going to try to bait out your counters, right? So that's what this comes down to. That's what high-level striking is getting the guy to play into your game. So whoever can get the other guy to play into their game is obviously who's going to have more success in this fight. That's what DP did a great job of in fight 2, countering Max Holloway all night long. So if Max can counter the counters of Dustin or get in and get out quickly without extending the combinations to give Dustin those opportunities, I think Max will have a tremendous amount of success in this matchup. Now, I have this in blue here because I think that this is one of the biggest keys, if not the biggest, for Max in this fight. Do not just box with Dustin. Do not just straight box with Dustin Poirier, because we have seen that while Max, I think, will have more sting on his shots, I think the volume will still be there. I think that a little bit of a difference in this fight will be the fact that Max will hit harder, right? So I don't think Dustin's just going to be able to eat a bunch of shots and just kind of weather these storms. I expect more sting from Max Holloway in the 55 division. But having said all that, Dustin is the better boxer here. He still has an advantage over Max Holloway when it comes to the defense, finding these counter opportunities. He is a step ahead of Max in that department. So how do we answer that? Lots of kicks, right? If you saw how Gaethje set up Poirier in that BMF title fight, he was throwing that kick, right? He was throwing the right hand, out there. And then Poirier, because he uses that kind of Philly shell, right? That Stonewall guard, He leaves the side of his head open, right? That's one of the things with Sean Strickland when you see him moving forward, right? Adesanya was trying it. Dricus du Plessis, throw a backhand, throw the kick up. Remember when Leon Edwards knocked out Kamaru Usman, right? Guys that want to box and kind of move their head around and utilize these different boxing guards, you could sneak a kick around the side, right? We saw Max Holloway drop Volkanovski in fight number 2 of the high kick, and we've seen Max throw a lot more kicks towards, over his past few fights. Now, he's not the greatest kicker, right? He doesn't have a ton of sting on him, but a kick is still a kick, man. Like if you it's basically like throwing a baseball bat upside somebody's head. So I think mixing in the boxing with the kicks, front kicks up the middle, those oblique shots from the outside to try to keep Dustin off of him, because Dustin's going to look to pressure. He's going to want to get in the pocket. He's going to want to get to his boxing range. That's what Max has to avoid. Stick and move on the outside, get in, get out, throw kicks at him, frustrate Dustin Poirier, because we saw Gaethje do an amazing job of that in their rematch. Gaethje was attacking the legs of Poirier. You saw Dustin getting a little irritated. If you can frustrate Dustin with movement, mixing things up, not just standing right in range where he wants you to box, you can frustrate this guy, and that is where the head kick upstairs could open up, or those opportunities to land those shots that Max Holloway is going to want to get to. And the last 2 things, answer the shifting combos. Where one of the biggest weapons of Dustin in fight 2 was he would throw the left hand, step forward, switch stances, and then throw that nasty right hand around the guard of Holloway, and that's where he was hurting him the most in that fight. I mean, every time he threw that, it basically landed. Now, we've seen Dustin, for some reason, kind of get away from those a little bit later in his career here. Now, I don't know if that's because he's going in there against grapple-heavy guys to where he doesn't kind of want to just, move forward, square up his hips to where guys could just shoot in on him. But we even saw Dustin landing those on Khabib back in the day, right? That's something that Dustin does a great job of. It's a little Marvin Hagler boxing trick, right? Kind of throwing the left hand, switching forward, and then getting to that power hand. Like I said, DP is a right-handed guy. He was crushing Max with that all night long. Max is going to have an answer for that, because if I'm Dustin, I am immediately testing this in round number 1, because Max does not move his head a lot. And while he's gotten faster, he still lacks when it comes to the boxing defense. So Max is going to have an answer for these shifting combinations, which I think will be him circling out and getting out of range and not just standing in front of Dustin like he did in fight 2. Last but not least, avoid the clinch and the grappling, right? I know Max Holloway since fight 1. Obviously, Poirier was able to submit him. That was so long ago, man. And what we've seen from Max throughout his career since, he's a hard guy to take down. And if you do take him down, he pops right back up. And his ground game has actually really, really improved throughout the years, even though we don't get to see a ton of it, right? Because he's predominantly in striking battles with guys. Avoid the clinch. Max has the speed advantage. He's got the youth on his side, and I think him coming up to the 55 division this time around, I think he's going to be big. I think he's going to be powerful. I think he'll still have the volume, still have the speed, but get out of the clinch situations. That's where Dustin kind of lifts his head in the air, rips to the body, brings those hooks. That will be an opportunity where Dustin will look to capitalize. And if Max is getting the better of him, frustrating him with speed, it would not surprise me if Dustin tries to slow it down by clinching him up against the fence. But given where they're at in their careers, I don't think, while Dustin has shown, even in fight 2, that he does have a little bit of a grappling edge, I don't expect that this time around at this point in their career. So Max Holloway, I believe if he implements these things, mainly footwork, implementing kicks, not just boxing in the pocket with Dustin Poirier, not just moseying forward into range to where he's basically using his face to block shots, I think he has a tremendous amount of success in this fight, because while he's always had volume, while he's always had speed, I think the volume, the speed, backed by having more sting on his shots now, I think it's going to be a very hard night for Dustin Poirier if Max comes in and fights this way, man. So we'll see. We'll see what Max kind of does. This is exactly what I'm expecting. But let's move on to the Diamond here. The Diamond from Lafayette, Louisiana, one of my all-time favorites as well, and it's very straightforward for Dustin Poirier, right? Dustin's the guy that's up 2-0 here, right? He's the guy that he's had the answers to beat Max Holloway. It's on the guy who has not beaten you in the past 2 times to make all of the adjustments. Now, I'm expecting Dustin to do a couple things that he did the second time around, but also some nuances that I think he will add in this time around as well. And we all know Dustin's game. He wants to box. Dustin Poirier has outstanding defense, a very, very good guards that he uses, and he baits you in, right? A lot of the time, he will leave the body open to where he can pick you off with that right hook. He will throw that left hand down the middle. He will mix things up incredibly well. Then he tries to get you to just kind of box in the pocket and trade with him, slug it out, because that is where Dustin seems to get the better of exchanges, right? If you go back to the second Conor McGregor fight, every time they bit down in the pocket, yeah, Conor was landing some good shots, but Poirier would always end the exchanges by landing something, whether it's a good right hook that hurt, Conor at the end there, right? People talk about the calf kicks. Oh, he was landing some really good right hooks on Conor McGregor. And I know he's a southpaw, so it's a little bit different, but I expect Dustin to move forward, pressure Max Holloway, look to get in his face, because we're seeing Dustin, he's in some of the best shape he's ever been in his career coming into this fight, and it's his last one, right? He's going to try to go out with a bang. Dustin Poirier is going to leave it all on the line. Like, he's going to have some plot armor on him, right? It's going to take a vintage Max Holloway to go out there and beat this guy. He's walking out with Lil Wayne, the energy, the crowd's going to be on his side. Dustin is going to be floating on cloud nine, man. He is going to be a hard guy to beat come Saturday night. And, he wants to get into boxing range. He wants to counter Max Holloway. He wants to bait him. That's what he did a great job of in fight number 2. Dustin is an outstanding counter boxer. He'll feint. He'll get you to open up. He'll time that jab. He'll time your backhand. And we saw him have a lot of success with the left hand down the pipe against Max Holloway. We saw Dustin even in the rematch against Justin Gaethje, against Islam, against Benoit Saint-Denis. He throws that left hand to the body. Then he brings it right back upstairs. He looks to get to the left hand and get to the right hook. Now, that calf kick is going to be big for Dustin in this fight, right? I mentioned Max is going to have an answer for it because Dustin has a really good calf kick, man. He really does. We saw him use it a little bit against Islam. We saw him use it a little bit against Benoit. We saw him use it against Conor McGregor to where that hindered his movement. And like I said, he does a great job of extending the combinations to switch stances to still be able to get to that calf. And we've seen, as tough as Max is, man, he doesn't blink when you're battering his calves. I mean, Gaethje's one of the hardest kickers we've ever seen at 55, and it doesn't even, Max didn't even care, right? I mean, I know his calf was all welted, but he just kept moving forward. It didn't bother him at all. So I don't expect this to be too big of an issue for Max. But I think if Dustin does this, he'll work at the base of Max Holloway, and every little thing that you can do to chop down at his base will make him more of a stationary target to where Poirier can pressure him, get in the pocket, and get to his boxing. But be patient and have a poker face. This is so important. In the second Gaethje fight, Dustin was showing that he was getting frustrated, right? Because the first time that he fought Gaethje was just in the pocket, slugging it out with him, throwing these big combinations to where, the second time around, we saw this very improved Gaethje, a guy that likes to sit on the back foot, stick and move, doesn't just recklessly come into range and eat a bunch of shots just to land a calf kick. And we saw him chipping away at those kicks. You could see Poirier making faces, pulling up the shorts. He was getting a little irritated, right? He was having a hard time tracking down Gaethje. Then he started to land the left hand. But the movement frustrates Poirier. Dustin cannot get frustrated because Max is going to be elusive. He's going to be fast. Do not show those signs of frustrations, because if you do, Max Holloway will then be like, I got him. And then that is where Max will start to build, and that is where I think Max can then start to take over the fight when it comes to that, because I think that frustrating Poirier with kicks and movement is going to be a very big game plan for Max coming into this. And shifting combos, I have this highlighted because look, I said Max didn't have an answer for this in fight 2, right? And if I'm Dustin, he's got an outstanding boxing coach with Dia Davis, right? And he's well coached with Mike Brown and American Top Team. I would be shocked if they don't go back to the well and try this. They landed, these shifting combos on Max all night long, and they were some of the most significant shots that they were landing in the fight, to where they were really rocking Max with that shot, getting to the right hand. I think that they're going to look to go to that and try that a number of times in this fight, but I don't know if Dustin is as fast at getting to that as he was back in fight number 2. So that is going to be something to watch here, is does Max have the answer for this? And will Dustin go back to the well and try this because he had so much success in fight number 2? And the right hook and left hand, right? I already kind of touched on this. Those are Dustin's best weapons, right? He throws good uppercuts on the inside, but on the outside, when you are throwing your jab, he will try to pick you off with that right hook over the top when you throw the straight hand to the body, which I'm sure Max is going to do. He was doing a great job of it against Gaethje. That is where Poirier will keep the guard up so you target the body and he baits you and then throws that right hook right over the top. That is exactly what Dustin's going to try to do in this fight. Try to pick Max off as soon as he enters range because, again, Max will be faster. So how do you solve that? Pressure, force things out of him, and then try to counter whenever he tries to put it on you, right? That is what Max is going to try to do. He's going to try to find those opportunities. Dustin will play the waiting game. He will try to bait out Max Holloway's attacks to then counter him. Smart pressure. Right, Dustin, he was doing a great job of this, the second time between the two. He was doing a great job of this against Gaethje. It's when you have a grappling threat that we don't see a ton of pressure from Dustin Poirier. But in these striking battles, he likes to move forward. Sometimes he's okay sitting on the back foot. If you want to chase after DP, like Conor was doing, he'll sit on the back foot and just counter you, right, up against the fence. He'll play that game up against the ropes where he can find those windows of opportunity to counter. But I think Max will mix in some pressure, but I expect Dustin to be on the front foot for a majority of this fight. He's going to be chasing after Max because Max will have, he'll be fighting with the length from range, and he will be utilizing that footwork along the octagon side. Smart pressure, head him off, get in his face, throw those shifting combinations to cut him off, and try to land those big shots. And last but not least, I know it's Dustin's last fight. I know he wants to go out with a bang, and I doubt that we see any grappling in this fight. But if we do, I would expect to be expected to be Dustin Poirier trying to maybe wear on that frame of Max Holloway, right? Max he looks big, man. But again, he hasn't been carrying that around a lot when it comes to fights, right? We saw him move up against Gaethje, look big. He looks even bigger than when he fought Gaethje, right? So how is he going to carry that size around? I don't expect it to be an issue, but I do expect Dustin, if things aren't necessarily going his way, if he's struggling with the speed of Max Holloway, and there is a little bit more sting than what Dustin is expecting, I wouldn't be shocked if he tries to clinch Max up against the fence. Not saying he's going to take him down, but try to wear on him a little bit. Try to fatigue him a little bit. Try to slow things down and kind of build up some of that blood in his arms to make Max a little bit slower. And that allows Dustin to kind of get his hands on Max a little bit easier if he's able to close him down, crush this space up against the fence. I think if Dustin implements this game plan, it gives him a very good shot to go out there and go up 3-0 over Max Holloway. Man, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be an absolute good one. Man, I got goosebumps right now as we're wrapping this up. But listen, ultimately, I'm going to make a pick. Now, I would love for this to end in a draw. I'd love for this to end in a draw to where it basically is a win for DP, a win for Max Holloway. But the likelihood of a draw happening, I don't know. I don't think that that's super likely, right? It's hard to see draws these days, but here's the bottom line. It's going to come down to Dustin Poirier is a little bit older now, right? And I think he's going to go out there and he wants a war, right? He's even in that interview with American Top Team. They're like, look, man, do you want a first round KO or a 5-round war? And before Dustin's like, in the past, it'd be like a first round KO, where now this is the last ride, right? This is the last dance. This is legends only, right? And I think that Dustin wants that 5-round war to go out with a bang. And I think that he's going to find himself in some trouble in this fight because this isn't the same Max Holloway. Max has very much evolved his game. While, Poirier's made some nice adjustments, mainly with his takedown defense. His boxing has gotten a little bit cleaner. His defense in the pocket has gotten even better. But I think Max has made more improvements. I think his elusiveness, the adjustments in his fighting style, I think it's going to be a little bit too much for Dustin Poirier come UFC 318, man. I think that Max Holloway is going to win this fight by a decision. I think he fights elusive. I think that he utilizes footwork, kicks, and goes in there and implements a very smart game plan to build his steam to move forward and make a run in the lightweight division. And I understand why the UFC booked this, right? It's a trilogy. Max is a nice guy. You couldn't have a better dance partner for DP to go out on, right? A guy that's going to be respectful and very understanding of the whole situation. A guy that's going to go out there and give the fans a fun fight with Dustin. But make no mistake about it, the UFC also booked this because Max is new in the lightweight division. He's committed to the move. This isn't him going back to, get a title shot at 45. This is him going on a run. He's going to be sticking around for a few years. Dustin is going into retirement. Obviously, if Dustin wins, it would be a storybook ending. But the UFC, I think, sees this as an opportunity for some get back for Holloway and to add a big name like Dustin to the resume as he looks to go on a run in the lightweight division. But something important to keep in mind, throughout the career of Dustin Poirier, as legendary as it has been, he has never lost 2 fights in a row. Does that change at UFC 318?